This is the BMW 3 Series and it remains one of the best looking cars in the company's lineup at the moment. But there's one thing that's a little bit different about this car, and it's that flap behind the front wheel. Because this is the BMW 330e, and although it has an E at the end of the name, it's not a fully electric car. It is a plug-in hybrid. So underneath this bonnet is a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, and that joins with an electric motor which has 113 horsepower, which then drives through an 8-speed automatic gearbox to the rear wheels. So yes, this is a moderately high-powered BMW with rear-wheel drive that looks good. See, it's not that hard, BMW. Now, I mentioned batteries, and this car has a 12 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, which you can plug in just here. It's a standard AC charger. You don't get any rapid DC chargers with this, but hey, you're not going to need it with such a small battery. Now, BMW says that when it's full is good for upwards of 60 kilometers of driving range using only the battery. I think that's a touch optimistic if you ask me. I've experienced around about 40 to 45 kilometers being a pretty typical range. That's driving in everyday normal commuter traffic and obviously having things like the air conditioning on. Now, as we film this, it is summer and it's been relatively warm, so I'd expect that you could probably lose another 5 kilometers of range off that if you're going to be driving it in colder climates or during winter. Because of where that battery is housed in the back of the car, boot space is a little bit compromised. It's only 375 litres of space in the back of this 3 Series, and that's smaller than what you'll get in a hatchback like a Volkswagen Golf. Now, it's not helped further by the fact that you have a relatively tight aperture to get in here. It's not very high, so if you've got to get anything bulky in, it's not going to be that easy. Now, there are some upsides. You've got a separate storage area below here that you can put in your cables and all your different charging paraphernalia, and within either side there is a little bit of extra space, but really this isn't a huge amount of room. Now, BMW does offer a 3 Series Touring, so if you do have your heart set on a 3 Series and you do need to carry stuff, that's actually worth considering. Unlike the boot, there isn't any compromise when it comes to rear passenger space. I have plenty of room back here, both headroom and legroom, and for reference I'm about 5'9", so as you can see I've no problem with the seat in front, which is currently set up for my own driving position. Now, like all of these cars, and especially for any car that offers rear wheel or all-wheel drive, there is quite a chunky transmission tunnel in the back here, so whoever is going to be sitting in the back here is going to lose out. They're getting the short straw because really this is only a half seat. It is much better up front. The layout is really nice. There's a good quality finish. I think this is one of the best interiors that BMW currently does. The seats are nice. There's a high quality feel to them again, but they're also good and supportive, particularly in the sides. I love the fact that you've got wireless Apple CarPlay here, although the iDrive system is pretty good. It's controlled by the central rotary controller on the center console, or you can use the touchscreen, and on the center console you can select your different drive modes, which can display also on the main screen. Every time you get in and start driving the 330e, it will try and use the battery wherever possible. So it's always trying to minimize the amount of fuel it's using and reduce the amount of emissions that are coming out of the tailpipe. So that's good. Even if there's not much battery range left, or if you haven't plugged it in, it will always try and, where possible, revert to using a hybrid mode. The engine is quite decent too. It's a 2-litre petrol turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and it's more than adequate for a car of this size. And combined with the electric motor, which is 113 horsepower on its own, you get a total system of 292 horsepower and 420 newton meters of torque. Now, the other big difference between this new 330e and its predecessor is that it's had quite an update to the chassis. So if you do want to have a bit more fun, you can put it into a sport mode and you can use both motors at the same time. And this is where the 330e really comes alive actually. It's quite brisk, and even though this might tout itself as being a economical hybrid, it's actually quite a bit of fun when you do get it into the twisty stuff. But of course it's not all about clipping apexes and setting a personal best on your way to work. This is, after all, a car that's going to be bought by a lot of people that are looking to save fuel, that are more conscious about the amount of emissions that their car has. And in that sense, this car does quite a good job actually, because when you revert back to the hybrid mode, or indeed if we switch into electric mode, it just changes completely. The engine dies off, we're now coasting downhill while recuperating energy back into the battery. So, you know, all this time you have a car that has the best of both worlds really. You can have a bit of fun in the sport mode when maybe you hit your favorite section of road on a Sunday or on the weekend, but equally when you're just doing your normal everyday commute, you can just put it into electric or into hybrid mode and coast along very comfortably, and it's calm, it's quiet. The ride is actually quite good. So even though this is a heavier car than the regular 3 Series, the suspension has been adjusted, and even in this M Sport spec, which normally has stiffer suspension, the ride quality is still very comfortable. There's a little bit of road noise that comes through, but not that much. And once you have it in this electric mode, it's an exceptionally pleasant car to drive. And even when you do work all your way through that battery and it's fully depleted, the interplay between how the petrol engine comes on and the electric motor and how they work is very, very smooth. It's not entirely seamless, but there are plenty of times, for example, when you're driving along on the motorway, that other than looking at the dial and seeing that it's changing and what engine is actually working, it's actually quite hard to differentiate between them. As plug-in hybrids go, the 330e is quite a good car because it strikes a nice balance between being able to have a bit of fun in the twisty stuff but still being quite economical when you're in an urban setting. Now, you do need to be quite fastidious about plugging this car in and keeping that battery charged up if you do want to get close to what those mythical figures say when it comes to fuel economy. If you're going to leave it mostly in a hybrid mode, you will typically see between anywhere from 5 to 8 litres per 100 kilometers, depending on exactly where and how you're driving. So unless you keep this thing plugged in all the time, you're not going to get much better fuel economy than you will from a 320 diesel, for example. And actually, a 320 diesel is still a much more fuel efficient car if you're going to be using much longer runs. So if you do typically longer motorway annual mileage, that's a car that may serve you better than this. But nevertheless, if you're in a fortunate enough position that you can plug your car in at home and charge it, and even better if you can charge it in your place of work or wherever you park your car during the day, suddenly this becomes a much more appealing prospect, because you can typically do your average daily commute, if it's 40 kilometers or thereabouts, you can do all of that using only the battery. That's our review of the BMW 330e. Hope that you found it informative. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and we'd love if you could take the time to subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the notification bell so that you'll get a ping next time we upload one of our video reviews. We also love to get your feedback on this, so please get involved in the comments below and tell us what you think about this car. And if you want to know more about this, including pricing, specs, or perhaps reviews of all of its rivals, remember to head over to CompleteCar.ie where you'll find everything you need.